In today's clip, I'm going to talk about how great and awful tiny homes can be on paper. I know, we've all been dreaming about this type of space for a couple of years now, right? So why hasn't it taken the world by storm? Well, find out next. Heyo, Zenpuck here. Another day not working for the man. So, topic is tiny homes. Pros and cons of tiny homes. So first of all, I gotta say, generally I love small living spaces, right? Because most people, they just don't need that much space. Or, for those of you who really do love space, buy land instead, okay? Because internal living space is mostly a waste and a terrible expenditure in terms of energy efficiency, okay? Tiny homes that are both on wheels or not have always represented to me one of the most efficient ways to be financially prudent. Now, having said that, I definitely feel like people forget there are reasons why tiny homes are only still a tiny percentage of homes at large, because these are not obstacles that could be overcome easily. So let's see what they are. Okay, pros. Number one. Human beings can only occupy a small space at a time, and normal-sized human beings do not even take up that much space sprawled out on the floor. So why is it that the average new single-family home is 2,400 square feet? That is an utter waste of space, right? Not all space needs to be separate. In fact, I'd argue the only separate spaces you need from a loved one would be a working space, as opposed to, let's say, a living space, okay? Now, on the flip side, when you have a tiny home, the con would be there's zero room for expansion for when your lifestyle changes. Okay, you'd have to build an additional or new structure because the expansion cannot be built in as in a conventional home, right? Where, let's say, your home office can be repurposed into a nursery, or kids can then start bunking together in a separate bedroom. Let's say if you have, even more kids, right? That just doesn't exist for a tiny home, right? Now, pro number two for tiny homes. You can move it, or in the cases of tiny homes not on wheels, it's generally much cheaper to build than a conventional home. Simply because the square footage is much smaller, right? And that sounds great. The flip side of that, though, is that one of the biggest problems that I often see people forgetting when they're looking up tiny home videos, either on TV or on YouTube, is that tiny homes really exist in a legal gray area in terms of what type of land it can even sit on. At least in the US, that's the case, right? Tiny homes on wheels have a real problem as to where you can park it due to all these zoning laws. And these type of zoning ordinances will remain slow to change because of NIMBYism and because most people are just stupid when it comes to their own neighborhoods, right? They can't just roll with the times. And to complicate things, that means that you do actually need some type of land, right, to put your tiny home. And it most likely will need to be in a rural area, not even suburban area, right? Unless you want to skirt the law, which honestly, that's a very shaky ground you're living on, right? So what ends up actually happening with this pro of, being able to move the ones on wheels is that you're really never gonna move it, okay? Even if it has wheels, the wheels just becomes an illusion, right? You might as well just, build custom homes wherever you are, right? Like a old-fashioned alternative to a tiny home would be an ADU or granny flat, right? Those type of dwellings, at least your local suburban laws can account for, right? So I'm using comparisons of rural versus suburban because when you get into cities, there are even more rules, right? So ADUs can be accounted for, but glorified RVs, which a lot of these tiny homes are, will not be. Okay. Reason number three, on the pro side, man, transformational spaces are just cool. I mean, who doesn't love transformers or things that serve multiple functions? I think that's a very intuitive thing. We just love multifunctional stuff, even when it's honestly unnecessary. I love watching configurations of small spaces in tiny homes in population-dense areas like Hong Kong. They just look like a dream of design and efficiency, right? Again, the con side to the same type of reason is that, well, if you have transformational spaces, that means every surface can serve multiple functions, which means that every surface will get used repeatedly and constantly because you don't have that much space to begin with. That means more cleaning. Okay? Just recall if you've ever had one of those lazy boys where it has a kick-out ottoman, right? More cleaning means more wear and tear, which means the spring that transforms and kicks out that ottoman will be the first thing to break. It is inevitable, right? Number 4, having a tiny home on the pro side will be forcing you to minimize your belongings, and that means less upkeep, not just on the energy front for things like electricity and heat, but also actually it's more efficient on your noggin, right? You have to spend less mental energy to take care of your stuff or think about your stuff. That's good, right? But on the bad side, forcing to minimize your belongings means it's going to become very difficult to have any sort of social gathering in your dwelling. I mean, let's be real. The space is barely enough for 2 adults and a pet. You're not having friends over at any time soon, right? Even if they do come to visit, your efficiency on stuff makes it much, much harder, if not impossible, to entertain. And reason number 5, on the pro side, hey, you're in the minority. Congratulations if you have a tiny home. You are special. Tiny homes as an investment where they're legal, I think, are super cool. You know, I see people using tiny homes as some sort of replacement for a granny flat, like in their backyard on land that they already own. That's really cool. I would love to stay in one for an Airbnb at the very least, for sure, right? Because they're very relatively rare. But the flip side to this reason, the fact that you're in the minority, also means that you have no political leverage or power to change those local ordinances. That makes it hard for you to actually own a tiny home and live in it legally. Okay? And also other people might think you're poor. So for the type of people who want to display status, yeah, not gonna happen. Okay? In conclusion though, I just want to mention one thing in addition to my last con reason. Oh wait, that's not a bad thing. You don't want to be showing status at all. Okay, don't be one of those people affected by status displays. Because prudent financial decisions should keep your own mind at peace. Okay, and that's a win against everyone else who thinks that stuff will make them happy, or somehow having a bigger house will make them happy, because it definitely will not. Okay? The reality, of course, being that not every family can be stuffed into a tiny home, and that's okay. Hey, I personally haven't made that choice either, right? But I still admire the concept and the spirit of this idea very, very much, and I think we can still learn a lot from how to simply be more intentionally driven, right? Rather than following the general trend of our society. So do you need a standard size home versus a tiny home? It's a personal decision, but I would argue you should always think about how to not waste your resources, right? And to do that, check out some of my other clips on the corners. Have a good day.